When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months and then brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, was it boring. All day the two men tended to their cows, and at night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and then went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be fun, and then we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds." "It should look like Harold," Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold and tiny eyes like his. They added dark hair and twisted a frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night, they brought him inside so they wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" And then the other one, making believe he was Harold, would answer in a crazy voice, very slowly. And they would both laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, kick him, or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take food they were eating, which both of they were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. That's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said, "and that will be that." "Well, let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then, the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe mice or some insects had gotten inside Harold, and that's how he was making the sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back to the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something frightening about Harold. "Harold is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred replied. "We've been up here in the mountain way too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed onto the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in the far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what to do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When Harold left, he was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped danger long enough and began joking and singing. But they had only gone a mile or two when they realized they forgot to bring the milking stools. Neither of them wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot of money to replace. "There's really nothing to be afraid of," they told each other. "After all, what could a doll do?" They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. "I'll catch up with you," he said, and Alfred walked toward the valley. When Alfred came to a rise on the path, he looked back for Thomas, but he did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again, and Alfred watched. Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun.